For years, I was the financial backbone of my family, and they took it completely for granted. Standing alone in Denver International Airport on New Year's Eve, I stared in disbelief at my mother's text, "Happy New Year, loser." My own family, my mother's stepfather and stepsister, had just abandoned me at the airport after a luxury ski vacation that I had paid for entirely. They left me stranded, took all the luggage, and upgraded themselves to first class on my credit card without permission. They had no idea I was about to dismantle the financial castle they had grown comfortable living in. Before I tell you how I methodically cut off their support and watched reality, hit them hard, drop a comment, letting me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever had to teach someone a hard lesson about appreciation. I was not always wealthy. Growing up in a small apartment in Chicago, I watched my single mother, Diane, struggle to make ends meet. But unlike the heartwarming stories you might hear about supportive single parents, my mother treated me like an inconvenience. If it were not for having to feed you, she would say while looking at bills, I could actually enjoy my life. Those words burned into my young mind, creating a determination to never be a burden. By 16, I was working after school at a local computer repair shop, saving every penny while teaching myself coding at night. My mother barely noticed my ambition, too busy complaining about her own problems. When I announced my acceptance to college with a partial scholarship, her response was lukewarm at best. "Well, I hope you have a plan to pay for the rest," she said, never offering to help, despite working a steady job by then. During college, I developed a cybersecurity algorithm that caught the attention of a tech incubator. By 27, I had built that initial idea into SecureStack, a cybersecurity company that specialized in financial data protection. When my first major contract closed worth 6 figures, I called my mother hoping finally for some recognition. "That is nice," she said flatly. "Say my car just broke down. Since you are doing so well now, maybe you could help your poor mother out." That began the pattern. As my success grew exponentially over the next 5 years, my mother suddenly became my biggest supporter, at least according to her Facebook posts. The reality was different. Each achievement was acknowledged only briefly before a financial request followed. When I sold a portion of my company at 32 for 8 figures, my mother's interest in my life skyrocketed. She introduced me to her new boyfriend Roger, a charming but financially unstable car salesman with big dreams of owning a dealership. His daughter Megan, my new stepsister, was a 24-year-old entrepreneur with a series of failed business ideas and student debt from 3 unfinished degree programs. The requests started small. Helping my mother pay off her mortgage seemed reasonable. I had the money, and she had raised me, however, reluctantly. But soon Roger needed capital for a dealership. Megan needed her student loans cleared. Then came monthly family allowances that increased regularly luxury cars, replaced annually designer wardrobes and vacations I rarely joined, but always funded. "Family helps family," my mother would say, whenever I questioned an expense. "After all, I sacrificed for you. This is the least you can do." The irony of her suddenly claiming sacrificial motherhood was not lost on me, but some part of me still craved her approval, still hoped that generosity might buy the affection she had never freely given. The manipulation was subtle but effective. If I hesitated about a request, family events would mysteriously be scheduled when I was unavailable. When I did attend gatherings, I was introduced to their friends as our successful son, who works with computers. My actual accomplishments minimized, while my financial contributions were the true source of their pride. Roger treated me with superficial buddy-buddy affection that disappeared the moment I declined one of his investment opportunities. Megan alternated between treating me as an ATM and an unwanted intruder in her family. Mom and Dad were what she called Diane and Roger, emphasizing my outsider status despite my insider funding. Their entitlement grew to astonishing levels. My mother once called at 2 a.m. demanding I wire money because they had overspent at a casino in Las Vegas. Roger borrowed my sports car without permission and returned it with damage he never acknowledged. Megan regularly told her friends I would cover their bills at expensive restaurants, leaving me with tabs for people I barely knew. Still, I maintained hope. Family was family, and I told myself they would eventually appreciate my generosity beyond its monetary value. By my 35th birthday, I was managing their lives more than living my own, paying insurance premiums, property taxes, credit card bills, and even parking tickets. Their financial irresponsibility had become my responsibility. The Aspen ski trip was my last attempt at creating genuine family bonds. I rented a luxury chalet for the week between Christmas and New Year's, arranged private ski lessons, made reservations at top restaurants, and even hired a professional photographer to capture what I hoped would be happy memories. The total cost exceeded $40,000, but I convinced myself it would be worth it if we could finally connect as a real family. The problem started immediately upon arrival. My mother and Roger complained their suite was smaller than they expected. Megan brought an uninvited boyfriend, who helped himself to the expensive liquor I had stocked. The first dinner was overshadowed by their collective dissatisfaction with the view from our table, despite it being one of the best in the restaurant. On the second day, Roger cornered me on the ski lift. "We have been talking," he said casually, "and we think the monthly allowance needs adjusting for inflation. Everything is getting more expensive." "We just increased it 3 months ago," I replied, trying to focus on the beautiful mountain scenery rather than my rising frustration. "Well, that was before Megan decided to try her hand at interior design. She needs startup capital for her business. It is a real opportunity this time." The pattern continued throughout the vacation. Beautiful moments on the slopes were interrupted by financial demands. Elegant dinners became negotiations. Every attempt at creating a genuine experience was undermined by their focus on what more they could extract from me. The breaking point came on our last evening. Megan had wrecked her BMW, the third car I had purchased for her in 2 years, and expected me to replace it with a Mercedes like her mother's. "I think maybe you should try public transportation for a while," I suggested, finally reaching my limit. "It might help you appreciate the value of things." The table fell silent. My mother's face hardened. Roger looked uncomfortable, and Megan stormed off dramatically. For the first time, I had definitively said no, and the temperature in the room dropped to match the snow outside. Little did I know, they were already planning their revenge for my newfound backbone. Denver International Airport bustled with New Year's Eve travelers as we arrived for our connecting flights. My mother, Roger, and Megan had barely spoken to me during the drive from Aspen, but I attributed their coldness to my refusal to buy Megan a new car. We checked our luggage, all packed in expensive suitcases I had purchased for previous trips, and made our way through security. "I need to use the restroom before we head to the gate," I told them as we navigated the busy terminal. "Can you wait here for me?" "Of course, sweetie," my mother replied with an unusual smile. "Take your time." That smile should have been my warning. When I returned less than 5 minutes later, they were gone, all 3 of them. I called my mother's cell phone. No answer. I tried Roger, then Megan. Nothing. Thinking we had misunderstood our meeting point, I walked to our departure gate. No sign of them there either. A growing sense of unease filled me as I checked the flight information board and saw our departure was still 2 hours away. I continued calling while walking through nearby shops and restaurants. After 30 minutes of searching, my phone buzzed with a text message. "Happy New Year, loser. Maybe this will teach you to be more generous with your family. Enjoy your sad little life while we enjoy first class." I stared at my mother's message, unable to process the cruelty behind those words. As the reality sank in, another notification appeared on my phone, a credit card alert. Someone had just charged 3 first-class ticket upgrades to my card. Then, another alert: purchases at the luxury shops in the terminal. Another: champagne and meals in the airline lounge. With shaking hands, I called the airline's customer service. "I need to know if 3 passengers from my reservation have boarded an earlier flight," I explained. "Let me check that for you, sir," the agent replied. After a few moments, "Yes, it appears those passengers have been rebooked on the 2:45 p.m. departure, which left about 20 minutes ago. They were upgraded to first class. Would you like me to rebook your ticket as well? Did they take all the checked luggage?" I asked, already knowing the answer. According to our records, yes. All 4 checked bags were reclaimed and rechecked for the earlier flight. They had taken everything: my clothes, gifts I had received, even my laptop in its padded case. All I had was my phone wallet and the clothes I was wearing. I sat down heavily in the nearest chair, trying to comprehend what had just happened. As I waited for my later flight in the nearly empty gate area, I watched families and friends celebrating the approaching New Year. Groups took selfies, couples shared kisses, children ran around wearing 2023 glasses. Meanwhile, I sat alone, betrayed by the very people who should have cared about me the most. My phone continued to buzz with credit card alerts throughout the evening. They were clearly celebrating their cruel joke at my expense, both figuratively and literally. By the time midnight approached, they had charged over $5,000 to my cards. As the terminal erupted in cheers, an Auld Lang Syne played over the speakers, a strange calm settled over me. This humiliation was actually a gift. It had finally shown me the truth I had been avoiding for years. These people were not my family, in any meaningful sense of the word. They were parasites who had found a willing host, and I had allowed it to continue far too long. I checked into an airport hotel for the night, unable to get a flight home until morning. Lying in the generic room wearing a Denver airport gift shop sweatshirt and sweatpants, I began making plans. The hurt was transforming into something else, a cold, clear determination. My mother's cruel text kept replaying in my mind. Happy New Year, loser. By the time the sun rose on the first day of the new year, I had made a resolution unlike any other. This would be the year I stopped being a loser in their game and started playing by my own rules. I realized that true compassion was not enabling their entitled behavior. True self-respect required setting boundaries they had never allowed, and true family would never have abandoned me in an airport as a twisted punishment for not buying a third replacement car for an irresponsible driver. As my plane finally took off the next morning, I knew exactly what needed to be done. This was not about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and letting natural consequences finally teach what my generosity had prevented them from learning. Back home in my San Francisco apartment, I spent the first week of January assembling a team of professionals, a ruthless attorney specializing in financial separations, a forensic accountant, a digital security expert from my company, and a private investigator. Together, we mapped out the full extent of my family's dependence on my finances. The picture that emerged was more extreme than even I had realized. Over the past 8 years, I had spent over $3 million supporting my mother, Roger, and Megan. The car dealership I had purchased for Roger was still legally in my name, as was my mother's house. All 3 of their vehicles were leased under my company. Their health insurance, property taxes, and even streaming services were automatically paid from my accounts. You have essentially been operating as an unwilling trust fund, my attorney explained. The good news is that means you have more control than you realized. The digital security expert changed all my passwords, secured my accounts, and monitored for unauthorized access attempts. The forensic accountant documented every fraudulent charge made at the airport and created a complete financial separation strategy. The private investigator kept tabs on my family's movements and reactions as we implemented the plan. Timing was crucial. I waited until January 15th when their credit card statements closed. As expected, they had gone on a post-holiday spending spree, maxing out the cards I guaranteed. On January 16th, I executed the first phase of financial separation. Every credit card was canceled simultaneously. Their authorized user status on my accounts was revoked. Automatic payments for their utilities, subscription services, and insurance policies were stopped. The monthly allowance payment scheduled for the next day was canceled. Then I sent a certified letter to the car dealership informing the staff that ownership was changing hands, and Roger's position was terminated immediately. Since the business was legally mine, this was completely within my rights. I had already arranged for a competent manager to take over operations while I prepared to sell the business. Next came the vehicles. I contacted the leasing company and reported the cars as needing to be reclaimed due to unauthorized use. The timing was perfect. The 3 luxury vehicles were repossessed on a Sunday morning when all my family members were home, creating quite a spectacle in their upscale neighborhood. The security cameras I had previously installed at my mother's house captured their shocked expressions as the tow trucks arrived. For the final phase, I had my attorney serve official notice that they had 30 days to vacate my mother's house, which was still legally my property. The home would be listed for sale immediately with showings beginning the following week. Any belongings left behind after the 30-day period would be considered abandoned. The reaction was immediate and explosive. My phone erupted with calls, texts, and voicemails which my digital security expert documented without my having to endure them personally. My mother vacillated between rage and tearful pleas. Roger threatened legal action he could not afford to pursue. Megan unleashed profanity-laced tirades about family loyalty. When traditional communication failed to reach me, they turned to social media, portraying themselves as victims of an ungrateful son who had abandoned his family. My response was simple and devastating. I authorized my attorney to release screenshots of my mother's Happy New Year loser text, along with evidence of the credit card fraud they committed at the airport. Their social circle quickly turned on them as the truth emerged. Friends who had enjoyed their lavish lifestyle began distancing themselves, unwilling to associate with such blatant exploitation. Several acquaintances even reached out to me privately to share stories of how my family had bragged about manipulating me financially for years. 2 weeks into the process, Megan appeared at my office building, creating such a scene in the lobby that security had to remove her. The entire incident was captured on security cameras, providing perfect documentation for the restraining order I filed the next day. By early February, the car dealership was sold to a regional auto group. My mother's house was under contract with buyers eager to close quickly. The luxury items my family members had accumulated were being sold off piece by piece as they struggled to maintain basic expenses. My mother's cherished Mercedes, the one Megan had wanted to emulate, was the last vehicle to be reclaimed, taken from the temporary apartment they had rented after vacating my house. Throughout this process, I maintained complete silence toward them. My team handled all communications, legal and financial. I watched the consequences unfold from a distance, feeling not joy, but a sense of correctness, as if a long broken bone was finally being properly set to heal. By March, the financial separation was complete. My family had experienced the natural consequences of their actions, downsizing from a luxury lifestyle to a modest apartment, losing their status symbols, and facing the reality of supporting themselves. According to my investigator, Roger had taken a sales position at another dealership. My mother was working as an administrative assistant, and Megan had enrolled in a practical nursing program. The most surprising development came in April, an email from my mother that began with accusations, but slowly transformed into something I had never seen from her accountability. After several paragraphs of blame and anger, her tone shifted. I never thought I would be in this position at my age, having to work full-time again, living in an apartment, taking the bus. At first I hated you for it, but something happened last week. My coworker complimented my work, and I felt proud, actually proud of something I did myself. I cannot remember the last time I felt that before you cut us off. I am starting to understand that what you did might have been necessary. I will never forgive how you did it, but maybe, just maybe, we needed this wake-up call. I miss you, Cleon. Not your money. You. And I am sorry. I read the email several times before archiving it without response. One apology could not erase years of exploitation, but it was a start. 6 months after the airport abandonment, I sat on the balcony of my new home in Monterey, watching the Pacific Ocean crash against the rocks below. The salt air felt cleansing, a constant reminder of the fresh start I had created for myself. Reports from mutual connections painted a picture of my family's new reality. My mother and Roger had both maintained their jobs, showing unexpected persistence. Their apartment was small but functional, their lifestyle modest but sustainable. Most surprisingly, they were still together, despite the financial stress. Perhaps there had been genuine feeling between them after all. Megan had completed her first semester of nursing school with decent grades. Without the safety net of my money, she had discovered an aptitude for practical work and genuine ambition that had previously been smothered by easy cash. She had even started repaying her student loans through a part-time hospital job. The most unexpected development arrived in my inbox in July. Another email from my mother, but entirely different, in tone from all previous communications. Dear Cleon, I do not expect you to respond to this. I would not if I were in your position. But I need to say it anyway. I failed you as a mother. Not just at the airport, but for your entire life. I treated you as a burden when you were young, then as an ATM when you became successful. Neither was fair or right. The way we left you at the airport was cruel and childish. I am deeply ashamed of my behavior. Losing everything has been the hardest experience of my life, but also the most important. For the first time, I am standing on my own feet. I am paying my own bills. I am facing consequences for my actions. And through that process, I have finally recognized what I threw away. Not the money or the lifestyle, but the relationship with my son. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect financial support ever again. I just want you to know that I understand what I did. I regret it deeply, and I am working to become someone different. If you ever want to meet for coffee someday, just coffee, nothing more, I would be grateful for the chance. With genuine regret and love, Mom Diane. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no manipulation, no veiled requests, no expectations. For the first time, I felt something shift within me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of a path that might eventually lead there. Meanwhile, my own life had transformed. Freed from the constant financial and emotional drain of supporting my family, I rediscovered passions I had neglected. I joined a local sailing club, took cooking classes, and volunteered teaching coding to underprivileged teens. I formed friendships based on genuine connection rather than financial utility. I even started dating again. I met Elise, a marine biologist, at a local conservation event. She knew nothing about my wealth when we first connected over a shared interest in ocean protection. Our relationship developed naturally based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than material considerations. Most significantly, I redirected my philanthropic efforts. Instead of pouring money into the bottomless pit of my family's entitlement, I established a scholarship fund for first-generation college students pursuing technology careers. The foundation provided not just financial support but mentorship and internship opportunities, the kind of meaningful assistance that created independence rather than dependence. 3 months after her email, I responded to my mother with a brief message suggesting a meeting at a neutral coffee shop. Our first face-to-face encounter, since the airport, was awkward, tense, and brief, but it was also honest in a way our interactions had never been before. "I do not have money problems anymore," she said immediately, perhaps to clear the air. "I am not here to ask for anything." "That is good to hear," I replied. "I miss knowing you," she admitted. "I realize now I never really took the time to know who you actually are." We talked for exactly 1 hour. I learned about her job, her adjusted lifestyle, and her new hobby of container gardening on their apartment balcony. She learned about my foundation and sailing adventures. We did not discuss Roger or Megan. We did not reminisce about the past. We simply began the long process of discovering if anything genuine could grow in the space where obligation had once stood. As I drove home afterward, I realized the most valuable lesson from this entire experience. True family connections cannot be purchased. Real relationships require mutual respect, boundaries, and reciprocity. By enabling my family's financial dependence, I had actually prevented them from developing the very qualities that might have made our relationship worthwhile. In the months that followed, we established a cautious new foundation. Coffee meetings became occasional dinners. Eventually, Roger and Megan were carefully reintroduced into these gatherings. The dynamic was entirely different: conversations about mutual interests, rather than money, genuine questions about each other's lives, and a noticeable absence of expectations. Did I regret the abrupt, dramatic way I had cut them off? Sometimes. Could I have handled it differently? Perhaps. But watching them grow into self-sufficient, accountable adults suggested that sometimes the kindest action is allowing natural consequences to occur. My mother now says she is prouder of earning her Employee of the Month certificate than she ever was of living in a mansion. Megan recently called to share her nursing program achievements without asking for anything in return. Roger has shown unexpected humility in rebuilding his career from the ground up. As for me, I have found peace in the knowledge that true generosity is not about writing checks, it is about supporting growth, independence, and dignity. Sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes it means walking away. And sometimes, if you are fortunate, it means creating space for something authentic to finally emerge from the ashes of what was lost. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut someone off financially for their own good? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more true stories about setting boundaries and rebuilding relationships. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with financial codependency in their own family. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop enabling destructive patterns and hold them accountable with compassion.